When you respect yourself, the entire world begins to value you. But how does this really happen? Have you ever stopped to think about the impact that self-respect has on your relationships? When you put yourself first, everything around you begins to change. The respect you give yourself directly reflects in the respect you receive. It's not just about being seen, it's about being recognized for your true worth. When you respect yourself, the entire world begins to value you. Are you ready to discover how this works? The way someone sees themselves internally directly shapes how the world treats them. Jung stated that our self-image influences others' perception of us, and this happens in subtle, almost invisible ways. Imagine someone who feels insecure and inferior. Even without saying a word, their body transmits this message. Withdrawn posture, hesitant tone of voice, downcast eyes. And what happens? People around them pick up on this energy and often act condescendingly or indifferently. The opposite is also true. Someone who sees themselves as valuable projects that conviction and naturally receives more respect. The concept of psychological projection explains this phenomenon. Everything a person feels about themselves ends up reflected in others. If someone sees themselves as unimportant, they'll begin to notice signs of this worthlessness in all their interactions. Colleagues who don't listen to their opinions, relationships where they don't feel prioritized, opportunities that always seem to slip away. But is the problem with others or with the lens through which they view life? The world, in fact, merely responds to what the person projects. When that projection changes, the reality around them begins to transform. If someone doesn't value themselves, they unconsciously transmit this lack of respect and allow others to do the same. This manifests in small, everyday details, accepting inconvenient requests, swallowing disrespectful comments, giving up their own wishes to please others. In the end, the people around them just follow this pattern. But here's the secret. When someone decides to change how they treat themselves, everything begins to change. And this internal change needs to be genuine, not just a superficial act. But why do so many people hide their true essence behind masks? From an early age, we learn to wear masks to fit into the world. Jung called this adaptation the persona, the face we show to society. But the further this persona is from our true identity, the greater the internal conflict. Many people feel trapped in roles that don't reflect who they really are, repeating patterns just to be accepted. This disconnection generates anxiety, fatigue, and a constant feeling that something is missing. After all, when you live solely to meet external expectations, you lose the opportunity to express your authenticity. The danger lies in confusing the mask with the essence. If someone wears the persona of successful just to be validated, but inside feels fear and insecurity, this contradiction inevitably shows through. The unconscious cannot be fooled. Sooner or later, symptoms like anxiety, dissatisfaction, or even physical problems begin to emerge. The effort to sustain a false identity is immense because it requires continuous repression of legitimate parts of one's being. The energy spent in this process could be directed towards something much more powerful, the integration of the true self. But how do you recognize this true identity? The first step is to observe the moments when you feel complete, light, and spontaneous. It's in these instances that the authentic self manifests. What brings enthusiasm? Which activities make time seem to disappear? What thoughts and desires are constantly repressed for fear of judgment? These are the clues that reveal the essence hidden beneath the mask. The courage to remove this armor allows for a profound transformation because the more someone approaches their truth, the more magnetism and authenticity they radiate. And this leads us directly to the next point, the power of self-acceptance. Everyone carries within themselves a hidden side, a set of repressed desires, emotions, and impulses that Jung called the shadow. The problem is that the more someone tries to ignore this part, the more it unconsciously dominates their relationships. People who deny their anger, for example, tend to attract relationships where they are constantly disrespected. Those who repress their desire to be heard might end up in relationships where their voice is never taken seriously. The fear of recognizing certain parts of oneself leads to seeking external validation, causing many to accept less than they deserve, just to avoid confronting the pain of abandonment or rejection. When the shadow isn't integrated, it manifests in two ways: extreme submission or uncontrolled aggression. Someone who feels unworthy may become a compulsive pleaser, always putting others' needs above their own in hopes of being accepted. On the other hand, repressed anger can explode at inopportune moments, pushing people away. This imbalance creates frustration and a vicious cycle. The more we try to hide our vulnerability, the more we put ourselves in positions where it's exposed and exploited. The secret isn't to eliminate the shadow, but to know it and use it to your advantage. The integration of the shadow is what transforms someone from a hostage to the protagonist of their own life. This means recognizing your own strength, setting boundaries, and refusing to accept crumbs in any type of relationship. A powerful exercise is to write about the most uncomfortable emotions that arise day to day and identify how they shape your patterns. Meditation, therapy, and practices like journaling help bring to light what has been repressed. The more a person embraces their totality, the more respect they naturally attract. And this brings us to the next point: how self-knowledge strengthens personal authority. True respect doesn't come from the need to please or be accepted, but from the internal security of someone who knows their own worth. When a person doesn't understand who they really are, they end up seeking external validation, adapting to what others expect. The problem is that this quest for approval transforms identity into a reflection of the environment, not an authentic essence. Jung stated that whoever looks outside dreams, whoever looks inside awakens. And it's this awakening that allows you to build solid personal authority. After all, only those who truly know themselves can stand firm without depending on others' acceptance. Without self-knowledge, choices become automatic reactions, guided by fear or desire for belonging. Someone who doesn't recognize their values may submit to uncomfortable situations just to avoid conflict. Those who don't understand their limits may accept draining dynamics, confusing patience with excessive tolerance. Self-knowledge doesn't mean rigidity, but clarity. When a person knows what they want, what they believe, and how far they're willing to go, their presence conveys confidence. And confidence isn't imposed, it's perceived. This process of internal strengthening happens when attention shifts from focusing only on the external to looking inward. Observing your own emotions without judgment, understanding behavior patterns, and identifying what resonates with your own truth are essential steps. As this connection with yourself strengthens, a firmer and more authentic posture emerges. Power isn't in controlling others, but in not losing yourself. And this personal authority has a direct impact on how reality is created, leading to the next point: the influence of thought on the manifestation of life. The process of individuation, a central concept in Jung's psychology, represents the journey of becoming whole, integrating all parts of your being without depending on external validation. This path isn't about becoming someone better in others' eyes, but about discovering who you really are. When a person removes the masks they wear to fit in, they become authentic, and this authenticity generates respect. After all, there's something magnetic about someone who doesn't need to prove anything to anyone, as their presence conveys conviction and truth. The pursuit of individuation doesn't mean isolation, but a deep alignment between what you feel, think, and do. Those who live trying to meet others' expectations inevitably disconnect from themselves. On the other hand, when someone commits to their essence, their choices become more natural and aligned with their purpose. This awakens not only the respect of others, but greater respect for oneself, and the world reflects this level of consideration. The more someone values themselves, the more others perceive this and respond accordingly. Respecting yourself is an act of personal power. It means not accepting less than what resonates with your own truth. It means recognizing and integrating your own shadow, understanding your genuine desires, and expressing your uniqueness without fear of judgment. Individuation isn't a final destination, but a continuous process of self-discovery and integration. And when this journey is traveled with awareness, it leads to a state of genuine presence, where influence doesn't come from imposition but from one's own essence. And it's this authentic presence that shapes not only relationships, but the reality around you. Every person manifests archetypes in their relationships, and these symbolic patterns determine how the world responds to them. Jung described archetypes as primordial images that deeply influence the human psyche. If someone sees themselves as a victim, for example, they end up attracting circumstances and people that reinforce this position. Meanwhile, those who manifest the hero archetype act with courage, face challenges, and gain respect for their resilience. The energy you emit defines how others perceive and interact with you. The sovereign archetype, the inner king or queen, is one of the most powerful. It represents leadership, confidence, and self-control. When someone embodies this energy, they transmit a firm and magnetic presence, inspiring respect without having to demand it. On the other hand, the martyr archetype, often confused with virtue, is linked to self-abandonment. People who sacrifice themselves excessively for others without establishing boundaries end up attracting relationships that don't recognize their true value. The secret lies in the conscious choice of which archetypes you want to manifest. When you respect yourself and act from a place of authenticity, you naturally assume archetypes of power. This doesn't mean arrogance, but rather a balance between strength and sensitivity. The sage, for example, doesn't impose their vision, but their presence conveys depth. The warrior doesn't seek unnecessary conflicts, but also isn't afraid to take a stand. And when these archetypes are integrated, relationships transform because the respect you attract reflects the respect you have for yourself. What you allow in your life creates a pattern. When someone accepts disrespect, neglect, or manipulation, they unconsciously teach others that this behavior is acceptable. Jung stated that what we deny in ourselves tends to dominate us externally. If you avoid confronting your difficulty and setting boundaries, the world around you will reflect this weakness through unbalanced relationships, where your energy is drained and your presence devalued. Boundaries aren't walls that push people away, but filters that protect your essence. Those who don't respect themselves end up molding themselves to please others, but this quest for approval weakens their presence. Genuine respect emerges when you learn to say no to what diminishes your energy and yes to what strengthens your identity. It's not about being inflexible, but about defining how far others can go without violating your integrity. Your personal energy is a direct reflection of what you tolerate. If you allow yourself to be constantly interrupted, underestimated, or disregarded, your presence loses strength. But when you establish a clear boundary, without guilt or aggression, the dynamic changes. People begin to see your value because they realize that you recognize it yourself. Respect is born from the balance between openness and firmness, between knowing how to welcome, but also knowing how to preserve yourself. Those who learn to protect their energy become a magnet for more authentic and healthy relationships. Our posture, tone of voice, and even the way we position ourselves in space send messages to the world, often more powerfully than words. The unconscious, which is the foundation of everything we are, expresses itself through subtle signals, and these signals reveal a lot about how we see ourselves. Someone with high self-esteem, which is a direct result of profound self-respect, emanates an energy of confidence. There's no need to shout or impose yourself for others to notice. Respect and confidence appear naturally. This type of nonverbal communication creates an immediate connection, where people, perceiving this self-sufficiency, are attracted to your presence. When you see yourself as someone of value, your attitudes and behaviors change. You begin to walk with your head held high, to look people in the eye without fear, and to maintain a firm and calm tone of voice. The body, which is an extension of our mind and emotions, reveals how we treat ourselves. The way you position yourself and behave in the world reflects your internal belief about yourself. This creates an aura of respect that goes beyond what you can say. It's something others feel, unconsciously, and that makes them treat you with the same dignity with which you treat yourself. Self-esteem, therefore, translates not only into the words you say, but into every gesture, every look, every movement. When you respect yourself, you convey to others that you are someone worthy of respect. You don't need to demand or expect recognition. It simply comes because your energy is perceived as powerful and authentic. The world almost magically responds according to the energy you emit, and the way you communicate non-verbally becomes a reflection of what you already feel internally. Carl Jung brought forth the concept of synchronicity, which refers to the coincidence of meaningful events that don't have a causal explanation but align with a person's internal state. When you deeply respect yourself, your energy begins to emit a higher vibrational frequency, and as a result, the universe begins to respond to this frequency. Synchronicities become increasingly present, as if the path ahead of you were illuminated by a series of events and people that reflect your own level of respect and self-worth. These connections arise naturally, as if you were in the right place at the right time, and offer exactly what you need to continue your journey of growth and transformation. The most fascinating thing about synchronicity is that it often happens without you having to actively search for something or someone. When you position yourself with self-confidence and authenticity, the universe seems to align in a magical way. What you emit, whether a vibration of insecurity or confidence, attracts situations and people that are in tune with it. By respecting yourself, you begin to see opportunities and connections emerging, as if the very flow of life adjusted to meet your deepest needs. This phenomenon of synchronicity isn't limited to major events, but is also reflected in small, everyday situations. From a conversation that brings exactly the insight you needed to an unexpected encounter with someone who becomes a key piece in your journey. Everything seems to align smoothly, effortlessly. This response from the universe to your internal state confirms that self-respect isn't just essential for your well-being, but also a catalyst for significant and positive changes in your life. When you resonate with positive energy, the world around you also adjusts to reflect this positivity. Self-responsibility is the key to understanding true respect, as the world around us cannot give us something that we are not capable of giving ourselves first. When you begin to treat yourself with dignity, recognizing your own importance and value, the circumstances around you begin to reflect this internal transformation. This is because the way you see and treat yourself directly influences how the world reacts to you. If you allow yourself to be disrespected, the universe, so to speak, responds accordingly, reflecting these energies in your relationships and situations. On the other hand, when you take responsibility for respecting yourself, even in the face of adversity, life tends to reorganize itself to reflect this change. This process of self-responsibility goes beyond just recognizing your personal worth. It involves taking the necessary action to place yourself on the path of respect and dignity. When you refuse to accept less than what you deserve and take a firm stance on your boundaries, this not only strengthens your self-esteem, but also signals to the world that you will not accept less than respectful treatment. What you emanate through your actions and attitudes defines the type of energy you attract into your life. For example, by practicing self-responsibility, You don't wait for others to respect your needs. You communicate them clearly and firmly without fear of being judged or devalued. This positioning creates a field of respect that is reflected in your interactions. People around you begin to perceive your confidence and firmness, and as a reflection, they become more likely to treat you in the same way, respecting your boundaries and your values. Many people cannot fully respect themselves because they still carry traumas and limiting beliefs that were formed in their childhood or throughout life. These old narratives often arise as a response to painful experiences, leaving a negative impression on one's own worth. However, the true power of transformation lies in working with the unconscious. By allowing yourself to access these deeper layers of the mind, it's possible to rewrite these stories and create a new identity, more aligned with who you are in the present, free from the limitations of the past. This healing process involves much more than simply recognizing old wounds. It requires a deep mental and emotional restructuring, where limiting beliefs are replaced by more empowering narratives. For example, if you grew up believing you weren't worthy of love or respect, this belief shaped your attitudes, decisions, and relationships. However, by becoming aware of these beliefs and releasing these negative patterns, you can replace this narrative with a healthier and more positive one that recognizes and honors your true essence. This healing work doesn't happen overnight, but by dedicating yourself to it, you begin to see a profound change in the way you perceive yourself and how the world around you perceives you. When these emotional and mental blockages are released, there is an immediate transformation in your energy. The sensation of liberation is palpable, and this is reflected in your posture, in your interactions, and in your presence. People begin to perceive your true strength, a strength that is no longer conditioned by fear or doubt, but by confidence and self-respect. The energy you emit, now cleaner and more empowered, attracts people who are in tune with this new version of you. In this way, healing old narratives not only transforms your internal life, but also generates a new external reality where respect and dignity are natural and authentic. Jung said that what we deny submits us, and what we accept transforms us. This phrase synthesizes the power of self-knowledge and self-reflection. When we deny or repress aspects of ourselves, whether emotions, traumas, or even our needs, we end up becoming slaves to these hidden parts, which dominate our actions without us realizing it. On the other hand, when we accept these parts of ourselves with compassion and respect, we are able to transform them into sources of wisdom and growth. This process of acceptance is fundamental for self-development and for building a more fulfilling and balanced life. Respect is, in fact, a direct reflection of how you treat yourself every day. It doesn't arise from an external effort to please or impress others, but from constant work of self-evaluation. When you respect yourself, your energy changes. You emit a vibration that reflects the value you attribute to yourself. People around you begin to perceive this change, and inevitably, the way they treat you also transforms. This type of respect isn't earned but flows naturally, as it's the result of a genuine process of recognizing your own worth. By deeply respecting yourself, you create a new reality around you. The world begins to respond to this energy with admiration, consideration, and reciprocity. Relationships become more authentic and balanced, as you no longer allow others to cross your boundaries or disrespect your essence. This new state of being is reflected in all areas of life, at work, in friendships, in love. The respect you offer yourself is, without a doubt, the greatest gift you can give to the world, and it's through this that you create the reality you wish to live. This is the complete cycle of transformation. By changing your interior, you transform the world around you. Now that you know the impact of self-respect on your life, how about starting to apply everything you've learned here? What can you change today to begin valuing yourself more? Tell me in the comments. Remember, the respect you give yourself is reflected in the world around you. If you're ready to transform your relationships and your life, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to continue learning about how to become the best version of yourself. See you in the next video.